over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Greetings, good afternoon, and welcome back. There's a great piece at Black Agenda Report entitled Corruption, Lies, Biden's Health, and Trump's Victory. In 2020 and again in 2024, before his calamitous debate with Donald Trump, the Biden team assured the public that he only had a stutter, despite the fact that his decades in public service never indicated the presence of a speech impediment. The public were reassured that if they thought they noticed something else, they should not believe their lying eyes. Corporate media amplified the narrative and ridiculed anyone who attempted to counter it. Well, the headline today in the Washington Post is Biden thanks Americans for love and support after prostate cancer diagnosis. Cancer touches us all, the former president said as he spoke out for the first time since it was revealed he was diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. What's the correlation between corruption, lies, Biden's health, and Trump's victory? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. Here's the point. We have a tendency to view current events as though they occur in a vacuum, failing to understand the broader historic context in which most events take place. During each episode, my guests and I have probing, provocative, and in-depth discussions that connect the dots between these events and the broader historic context in which they occur, thus enabling you to better understand and analyze the events that are impacting the global village in which we live. On today's episode, the issue before us is the great contradiction, if not hypocrisy, playing itself out right before our very eyes. Now, some of those same individuals who denounced anyone who raised questions about Biden's health are writing articles and books revealing what they previously tried to hide. My guest is the author of Prejudential, Black America and the President. She's the editor of Black Agenda Report and who wrote this incredibly insightful. Oh, it's my guest, Margaret Kimberley, the author of this piece. As always, Margaret Kimberley, welcome back.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much, Wilmer.
So you write in your piece, Jake Tapper of CNN argued on air with Laura Trump when she noticed Biden's cognitive decline. Tapper accused Donald Trump's daughter-in-law of mocking what he called Biden's stutter and added she had, quote, no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline, end quote. Why is this an issue? And let me point out, my pointing out my observation of an individual's decline is not a diagnosis. It's my pointing out that what I'm seeing isn't normal. Anyway, Margaret Kimberley, why is this?
Well, thank you so much. And I did not know Biden was going to be diagnosed with prostate cancer when I wrote this. But in any case, yeah, Jake Tapper of CNN, one of the fake, more prominent fake journalists, and I call him fake because he is more of a PR person for the elites, for the establishment. So he may call himself a journalist, but in his reporting, his questioning of people, is his bias in favor of the Biden administration, for example, is very, very clear. I think it's funny that he's now the co-author of a book. I think it's called Original Sin, and it's there are always books after elections dissecting the election, especially from 2024 when the incumbent president dropped out and endorsed his vice president, whom nobody had chosen, and Donald Trump comes back from being arrested and found guilty of felonies. So, of course, there are books about it, but there's an additional element of Biden's health, which I maintain we were lied about. As you point out, we can tell when someone isn't well. We can tell when someone's health has changed. We're not stupid. No, you're not an MD and you can't say what they have, but you notice that there is something different. And especially when that person seems to be unable to remember, Biden has these strange outbursts. All of these things told us that he had some sort of a health problem, but they rigged it for him in 2020. They wanted Bernie Sanders out. They coalesced around him. They said he had a stutter. The media went right along, rubber stamped that lie. And they went with it for 4 years. So anyone, and then last year rolls around. And by the way, I also want to add, I kept thinking that the Democratic Party oligarchy was going to get rid of him, but the Democrats don't have a competent oligarchy either. And it was clear that he was, first of all, in trouble politically. His approval ratings were always less than 50%, an indicator of trouble. He didn't look well. Then along comes the debate, and the rest is history. But these journalists, and I'm using air quotes, like Jake Tapper, shot anybody down who said anything. But now he's promoting this book, which gives details. There are other books being written now about the 2024 election. But I think it's interesting that people like him, who called other people, condemned them, smeared them, and now he's on board with what he said you couldn't talk about, to tell us how they hid his health problems, how they went along with it, and ultimately ended up with Trump becoming president again.
I need to take a moment, and we've got some new members. Hannibus Davis, thank you very much as a new member. R. Amin, thank you very much as a new member. David Johnson and Zach, thank you. Robert Brown, thank you for that super sticker. Greatly appreciate that super sticker. Margaret, you mentioned they wanted Bernie out, and they wanted to keep Biden in. Talk a bit about what you see, because this is twice they wanted Bernie out, and twice they took Bernie out, and now Bernie's back. He's like a bad penny. He's Bernie's back. AOC walks around with him sometimes with this anti-oligarchy tour. Once again, 30,000, 40,000 people show up at a Bernie rally. Folks, haven't you seen this film before? Twice? The analogy, Margaret, I use is, one of my favorite films is The Godfather. And every time Sonny Corleone is in the kitchen and the phone rings, I yell out, "Sonny, don't answer that phone." Sonny, don't go out on the causeway. And every time Sonny gets shot on the causeway.
Well, I think that's a great analogy. I think this Fight the Oligarchy tour, it's an audition for AOC, for Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for her to test the waters as a potential presidential candidate in 2028. I think that's a big part of it. But Bernie's shtick is old now. My late Black Agenda Report colleague, Bruce Dixon, he coined the phrase sheepdog. He said in 2015, Bernie's role will be to sheepdog, to herd leftists back into the Democratic Party. And that's exactly what he is doing. Bernie talks big when the Democrats are out. So now he's introducing legislation on Medicare for all, which will go nowhere. He wouldn't do it when Biden was in. He helped to, and AOC, they played this role of protecting him from any critique from leftish Democrats, and defended him and defended everything he did and endorsed him and campaigned for him. So there's no difference here. This is just some new marketing, and it's for AOC to see if some people say she'll challenge Chuck Schumer in the primary in the Senate here in New York State. Others I believe ultimately she does want to be president. So we see this again and again. Bernie talking big when Republicans are in and Democrats don't have a shot, defending the people who always kick him to the curb. So enough already. And I don't know how listening to AOC and Bernie is going to stop oligarchs from running the country.
2 quick points. First of all, Douglas Campbell, thank you. Good afternoon, new member. Thank you. And he wanted Bernie. Douglas, you're not alone. A lot of folks wanted Bernie, and a lot of folks, particularly in, I guess that was the 2016 election, thought they were going to get Bernie. But that was not to be. Margaret, you mentioned Bernie's healthcare legislation, mm-hmm. which to me is incredibly telling in terms of the fact that with that legislation, Bernie Sanders has given the Democratic Party and the American people something incredibly tangible to support. But he's basically talking to himself. And another element that I'll add to that is the Social Security discussion. If they simply remove the ceiling on the Social Security tax, mm-hmm. they could make Social Security solvent till the next millennium. They would be able to not only increase benefits, but lower the retirement age. And for about 32 or 33% of African Americans, Social Security is our prime source of retirement income, which means, and the average, I want to say the average payout is something about $1,800 a month.
Yeah.
Which is around $23,000, $24,000 a year below the poverty line. So before we get back to your piece, I wanted, Democrats would do themselves and the country a huge service by backing some, but they're sitting silent.
Because the oligarchs don't want them to. They made it clear. They don't want anything that's going to help the people. So they don't want a minimum wage increase. They don't want to increase, improve Social Security. They don't want to do any Medicare for all. They have said it is not going to happen. We will crush anybody who even thinks about it. And so they want this very, as you point out, a simple solution to Social Security solvency. Mm-hmm. But I also think there are people who just want their hands on that money. They want to privatize Social Security. And these schemes come up periodically. In fact, lately they've been trying to, you said they could lower the retirement age. They're trying to increase it. They don't say it. They'll say things like, oh, don't take your Social Security at 62.
Take it at 70.
Yes. So what they want is it's a stealthy way of raising the age for Social Security. And you're absolutely right. There are many people, pensions are a thing of the past. Mm-hmm. People like me who have pensions, we are a rarity these days. People have Social Security. Maybe they had a job where they put a lot into a 401k. 401k, by the way, was meant just to be a tax savings plan. It wasn't meant to be a retirement plan, but it is now. So people are struggling, all that to say, people are struggling in their later years. And here in New York, I recently read something like 60% of the seniors have either only Social Security or no retirement plan at all. And that is an example of the struggles of millions of people that go ignored, that are not addressed by either party in the duopoly.
You write, now Tapper has co-authored a book which focuses on the decline he said others were not qualified to discuss. Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice to run again. Well, Jake, I guess there are many chapters where he's talking about himself in terms of the cover-up. But you talk about this was a cover-up by Jake Tapper. How so?
Well, that, it's funny to me that, the internet lives on, right? So we see him, he's very smug and, telling Laura Trump, you're not qualified to say he's got a cognitive decline. And then he turns around and writes a book about the same subject. But he and others, they all went along. They all tried to protect him, but they didn't do their job as journalists, alleged journalists. They see themselves as defenders of the establishment, as defenders of the system, defenders of the state. That's their first priority, not reporting the news, not telling us what we need to know, not asking hard questions. So somebody like Tapper, says, what was the other thing they would say? Deepfakes. So there was all this video of Biden strangely wandering away like a little toddler. There would be there was a fundraiser. I think it was in Los Angeles. Obama was there, and Obama had to help him off the stage. And they were like, "That's a deep fake. It's not." I was like, "No, it isn't. I know what I'm watching." Or with the G7 leaders, there was some crazy thing. A guy parachuted in. They're all supposed to apologize, but Biden wanders off, and the Prime Minister of Italy, Meloni, she has to go and coax him back to the rest of the group. But we weren't supposed to believe our lying eyes. It was always something was wrong with you if you acknowledged what you were witnessing. It was to try to keep him in and try to drag him across the finish line, which they couldn't even succeed in doing. And then the oligarchs, who, if they weren't going to live up to their names, who should have gotten rid of him a year or two before, at the last minute they pulled the plug and try to shoehorn in the word salad lady at the 11th hour. And lo and behold, she lost. What a surprise.
Mel W., thank you very much for that super sticker. Greatly appreciate that. So you write, in 2020, you and many others observed that Biden was not a healthy man. His confusion and his strange and angry outbursts, such as telling a voter who questioned his position on the Second Amendment that he was full of excrement, are legendary. And Robert Huer, appointed special counsel investigating Biden, how he had improperly classified materials, was very clear in saying in his report he was an elderly man with poor memory, gave examples of troubling lapses for a man who was president and expected to run for office again. So we had clear, credible evidence. I was watching that fundraiser in Los Angeles when Barack was standing in the wings. Biden finished, stood there totally confused, and Obama had to go and rescue him, guide him back off stage. And now you've got an investigator with the Justice Department saying, this is an old guy that doesn't know what's going on. And all of a sudden, he became the enemy.
Yep.
Margaret.
Oh, absolutely. And it was, her was practically crucified. He's a Trumper. He's a liar. It's like, well, you could see it for yourself. It wasn't hard to believe what he was pointing out. Now they've released the audio of those meetings. So in case you didn't know already, you know it now. But this is a reckoning that has to be had about the Democratic. And it's, I want to say one more thing. Democrats love to feel superior to Republican voters and talk about MAGA and how they're stupid and how they're brainwashed and how they don't think for themselves and how they believe propaganda. They're no worse than they are. People are fighting. You should be angry at the Democratic Party for both of Trump's victories, which could have been prevented if they really acted like a political party who worked in the interests of their people. But instead, they're still trying to defend them, to defend Kamala Harris, to defend Biden, to defend all these people who messed up so badly. And so if you don't like Trump, now he's putting his picture on every federal building, which I just think is kind of funny. It's not the worst thing any president has done, actually. But so I think this is an opportunity, and I wish Democrats could take it, to just be discerning about their party. Even if you're going to vote for them, you don't have to defend everything they do. You don't have to ignore and excuse the obvious missteps. I mean, I think that's an understatement, which put Trump back in office. So I'm hoping that people have a little more courage and a little more anger at the people who let them down so tremendously.
Robert Pukey Ray writes, they don't want Medicare for all because our eyes will get adjustments.
I love that. That's very good.
You mentioned being a Trumper. That was one of the big pushbacks as you're trying to engage in constructive dialogue about a serious political circumstance. The immediate knee-jerk pushback, well, what are you, a Trumper? No, I'm just a guy that sees a guy that's 80-something years old that they need to take the car keys from the man, let alone the nuclear code. But the pushback, same thing with Kamala. The constructive dialogue and critique were not allowed, and in many instances still aren't allowed. Because I've had to say to folks, look, he kicked your butt twice. The man kicked your butt twice with the same playbook, and your response the second go round was the same response in the first go round. All you did was substitute Kamala Harris for Hillary Clinton, but the playbook was the same. And what I see, and for those that are wondering, well, why are you talking about this in 2025, is because get ready for the same result, because they're using the same playbook now, Margaret.
Oh, absolutely. It's astonishing to me, really. Democrats are like the most forgiving people in the world to their detriment. Absolutely. We keep seeing this belief that in order to keep Republicans out, the only way to keep Republicans out is to defend Democrats, defend them to the death. And even when, do you remember when they were trying to defend Biden and they were said, well, they say he's alert until like 4 o'clock or so. I was like, that's your defense? That he's alert for, part of the day, but, towards the end of the workday, he's kind of not there.
He's alert until you give him an ice cream sandwich. And his 4 o'clock ice cream sandwich, and then it's nap time. There's a little pad in the corner. You roll it out. He gets on the floor, puts his thumb in his mouth, and he's done.
Which raises another question for me. Who was running the country? Who was making decisions? Is this not a concern to anybody?
Well, let me see. Hang on a second here. Ally versus ally. Who Tony Blinken. That's who was running the country.
Absolutely. I believe, I know in foreign policy he was,
Right.
as Secretary of State, but I think Blinken was making a lot of decisions. I don't think Joe Biden was in any condition to really make any decisions about anything. And so we had this fake. I don't know what the emperor had no clothes, but anybody who said he has no clothes was told, no, you're wrong. He does. Can't you see the suit he's wearing? So here we are now with Trump, and all this anger. Trump. I said this the first time he was president. His election was, I think, traumatic for a lot of people, and this time I think it's even more so. Because he's governing outside of the scope of any other president, which raises questions for me. Remember, Biden was in, it was always what he couldn't do. Oh, he can't do that. Oh, what about the parliamentarian, which the vice president can overrule the parliamentarian? They left that part out. Anything they didn't want to do, it was, well, these things are hard. Well, he's not able. What is Trump doing? Throwing the Constitution out the window, saying we're going to get rid of habeas corpus so we can have mass deportations, ruling with executive orders, not even bypassing, even though he has a majority in Congress, bypassing them, saying he's going to get rid of agencies that Congress established, doing whatever he wants to do. And getting away with it so far. Sometimes judges stand in the way, but in the absence of somebody actually saying you're in contempt of court, that doesn't necessarily mean very much. So it's just funny to me that with all the excuse making about what Democrats can't do when they're in office, Trump is governing in a way I don't think any president has done in modern times. But that tells you the Democrats could do what their people want them to do.
Larry Hook says, to you, Margaret, we know, and because we know, what the hell are we supposed to do now? And he reiterated the question. No, Larry, we weren't ignoring you. But that is a great question, because there are a lot of people that I believe are sitting like the deer in the headlights. Mm-hmm. This is a truck that is running them over, and they don't know what to do. Margaret.
They don't know what to do because we have been told that the only way to make change in this country is through the electoral system, which is actually not true. It's always popular movements, popular agitation that brings about change in this country. So, but we've been told we can't have that. All you have to do is vote. That's the answer to everything. So you go and vote. Your party's wiped out. They're out of power. You have a president who ignores people in his own party, quite frankly. And then who do you have in your party? So everybody's looking at the Democratic Party's so-called leadership. And we had Hakeem Jeffries saying, well, we don't have any leverage because they run everything. It's their government. He actually said that. It's their government.
And then he said, what do you want me to do? Represent, dude. That's your job.
And then
represent.
A couple of weeks ago, he and Cory Booker, it was just laughable to me. They're wearing black suits. It looked like an album cover. They're wearing these black jackets, looking very serious, sitting on the Capitol steps, talking to people. And I'm like, and Cory Booker, spoke for 25 hours straight just to say, his poor staff, had to write a book, basically 1,000 pages of why you're not supposed, and raising money at the same time because he wants to run for president again. And that's what passes for leadership. They don't even use their bully pulpit. They don't even explain to people what's being done in their name. Why haven't they had a real filibuster? There are more than 40 Democrats in the Senate. Can't they all do a filibuster like in the days of old, which means actually trying to delay legislation, not just talking for 25 hours? So people don't know what to do because they've been told, look to the electoral system, and it's not working for them. But we need to go back to taking action into our own hands. They will follow us. But people have to relearn how to have a mass movement again. But I think that is the only way to save us. We have to save ourselves, because the Democrats, and I'll tell you something else that's obvious to me, the Democrats, because they're not an opposition party, they make deals. If you're in the minority and you get a little of this and you get a little of that, Trump has cut them out completely. That's why they're so flummoxed. What am I supposed to do? You have Trump ignoring them altogether. So it's pretty clear these people have no principles, no real ideology other than being part of the permanent government and having these cushy positions granted to them by the rich donors of the Democratic Party. They're not trying to rock the boat, and they're hoping they don't have to do anything. They're hoping that Trump will just be so unpopular they can sail back into office, but I don't know that that's true. People, as Trump himself said, when he was asked about people claiming they didn't vote for this, they didn't want him to do things he was doing, he said, yes, you did. You signed up for this, which is an indicator to me. Most people who voted for Trump are probably perfectly fine. So this idea that he's so unpopular and will lose, I don't think they ought to believe that.
Well, a couple of things. One, I've been saying for a while, since we started seeing those town hall meetings and Republicans have been saying, I didn't vote for this, the response is, oh, yes, you did. And Steve Bannon told you exactly what was going to happen. What you mean when you say, I didn't vote for this, what you mean is, wait a minute, you weren't supposed to screw me. That's what you mean. What you're saying is, my wife wasn't supposed to lose her job. My daughter that graduated from college 2 years ago and was on her about to end her probationary period at the Department of Education and lost her job 3 days before you weren't supposed to do this to my family. That's what they mean when they say that.
Oh, yes, it was, if somebody else got screwed, it was fine. But, the tariffs have hurt a lot of workers. They've hurt businesses in this country. We are all going to be spending more money. A tariff is just a tax. It means that the people pay more for whatever goods are subject to these tariffs. The solid red state people, farmers, what happened? China said, we don't have to buy soybeans from you. We can buy them from Brazil. We don't have to buy beef from you. We can buy it from Australia. They've now backed down. They're in talks with the Chinese government, which is how it should have started.
Correct.
But it can't be undone. Is China going to just go back to the status quo? I don't think so. So people are being hurt by Trump, and they thought it was going to be other. I love the people who were, married to someone undocumented who voted for Trump, and then their spouse is in detention, and they're like, I can't believe my beloved is being deported. Maybe I shouldn't have voted for him. Maybe you shouldn't have, but you did, and now you've got a dose of reality. But I also think it's important for us to not treat Trump as in some ways exceptional, as we've been discussing, but in some ways not. It's Bill Clinton who cooked up this immigration law in the 90s with Newt Gingrich, which makes it easier for anybody who's not a citizen to be deported. Green card holders, if you're convicted of anything, no matter how minor, you can be deported. But that's been true since the 90s. It's been true since Bill Clinton. This ridiculous, saying that white South Africans are living under a genocide and 50 of them just got here and there hasn't been any land expropriation. There's no genocide. The whole thing is false. But Joe Biden let 100,000 Ukrainians into the United States. Just overnight, 100,000 people were given this preferred status because they're white and because they're from a right-wing country. So we see these things before of what other and who bailed out Tesla with loans from the government? Obama. Mm-hmm. So Obama made Elon Musk, who you don't see as much anymore. He's not as visible.
Right.
But the damage has been done. Social Security, they have fewer people working. They were claiming there was fraud. You can't file on the phone. Of course, people are spooked who didn't plan to collect so early. Now they are. There's a greater demand for a service, which is diminished. People being fired from their jobs, lies about government efficiency and fraud. Actually, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, has cost the government money, mm-hmm. Which we are going to see more and more of. So all of these are things that people did not think through in voting for Donald Trump, but now they've got to live with it. Actually, all of us are living with it.
And to your point about Trump, I've just written a piece called "Democracy Fails Like Bankruptcy: 2 Ways, Gradually, and Then Suddenly." And because I go through a brief chronology of the things that were done before Donald Trump came into office and how failing to address those issues then have gotten us to where we are now. And I closed the piece by saying American democracy is failing in the same manner one falls into bankruptcy. Trump is not the cause, he's the culmination. And I think more people need to understand that. To Larry's question about what to do, well, we were saying during the election, people need to seriously consider voting third party, because had both parties seen a dramatic rise in the percentages of support for third parties, that would have been an incredible clarion call. But folks, if you do that, you're throwing away your vote. No, what you're doing is you're playing the long game. That's what you're doing. There's a whole lot of voter education, but they needed to focus on voter organization. People need to understand the power of organizing and calling for a lot of people that say, what are we to do? And this is not an accusation. This is a serious question for something y'all to consider. Those of you that keep asking, what are we to do? When was the last time you called your congressman? When was the last time you wrote your senator? And let me say, Kevin Baptiste, thank you for that $10 super sticker. Miss Margaret, the role of journalism is to help construct the current state of the status quo and also protect it. And it's unfortunate. Thankful for those like you and the late Glenn Ford.
Thank you so much for saying that. That's why independent media is so important. Black Agenda Report is important. This program on YouTube, Wilmer's show on YouTube, is so important. You cannot depend on the corporate media. If you only read the New York Times, I believe there's very little you would really know. You would know what the establishment wants you to know, but you wouldn't know anything you really needed to know. But to your point about education, I would say political education, not voter education. It's clear to me the Democratic Party does need to die. But nature abhors a vacuum. So do we want to see Trump ascendant? No. But if that's the only other party, you can't change the Democratic Party from within. People, please stop saying that. They're getting rid of one of their vice chairs because he said things they didn't like. They're like, well, let's have another vote.
Right.
Is that, excuse me, David Hogg. Is that democracy? So I think there has to be political education.
Wait a minute, and what is he saying? He's saying some very practical, real things.
And he's not even talking about anything really left wing. He's just like, these establishment people need to get the hell out. Well, I think so, with the debacle that they carried out last year. But their reaction is to get rid of him. And so they can continue to do the bidding of people who don't care about us and occasionally win. Sometimes they'll win, sometimes they won't. It's okay if they don't, as long as, but we need political education, and people need a historical education. The New Deal came about because there were millions of people who were openly leftist, socialists, communists, and they were afraid. You have to make them afraid. And that's why there was a New Deal. That's why there was a Social Security Act, because they were afraid of the people. And if they're not afraid of us, then we're out of luck. We're not getting anything we want.
And to that political education in the New Deal, people need to understand that when Roosevelt first started proposing the New Deal programs, the Supreme Court kept overruling or overturning the things that he was wanting to do. And it got so bad that he threatened to increase the number of members on the court, so that he would have a majority that would be more in line with what he wanted to do. And that's where we got the phrase, the switch in time that saved nine, because the members on the court decided that while the people are really behind this, as the Depression got worse, people are really behind this, we need to start listening to the people. That was at least the excuse that they gave.
Well, but there's nothing that says the president can't increase the number of Supreme Court justices. You can do it. Obama could have done it. Biden could have done it. And if you're talking about the Supreme Court, Obama should have made that recess appointment. They should have kicked Ruth Bader Ginsburg out. Being nice to her, she was already 80 years old, had already had cancer. They should have pushed her out. Period. The end.
Forward thinking.
Yes, but Democrats are establishment people. They want the status quo. They want to nibble around the edges and change a few things, but they do not want major change of any kind. It's the Republicans who want a radical change. It's not a change I want to see, but You can't have one wing of the duopoly who says we're going to do whatever the hell we want, and the other one's obeying these niceties so they can just be part of a status quo in the permanent government and, not ever shake anything up. And so that is, I guess that's my hobby, right? Talking about what's wrong with the Democratic Party. But that's why we are where we are now.
Again, first of all, there's this, you only get this discussion about voter education around election time. It needs to be an ongoing process. And again, it's not just voter education. You need to teach voter organization, going back to the freedom schools of the civil rights movement, and where they were. But see, here's the problem, I believe, that the Democrats would see in this, is that if you teach people how to organize, you can't control what they organize around.
Yes.
And if you can't control what they organize around, then you've opened Pandora's box. You've created a Frankenstein monster, and you don't want that monster attacking the village.
Well, that's why they're willing to lose. I believe Bernie Sanders could have beaten Trump in 2016.
It wasn't been a contest.
Bernie is not that much of a left winger. I would think it would have been smarter to co-opt him because he would have done it. I think he surprised himself with his success in 2016. All right, Bernie, we're going to let you be president. Yeah, you can't do too much though. And I think he could have won.
I don't think it would have been a contest.
And but to your point, they don't want people to demand changes. You can't close Pandora's box, or it's after the what was in Pandora's box? I can't remember. But anyway, it's like Yes, it's like closing the barn door after the horse left.
Right.
So that's what they're most afraid of. That's why they crushed Occupy Wall Street. That's why they co-opted the protests in 2020 after George Floyd was killed by the police. That's why they do these things. But that's why you have to get rid of them. I think we need a general strike. But you'd have to have a population that had that kind of political education of how to carry that out. What kind of cooperation you would need, how we would help each other in a time of crisis. And America, everything is, we always think of ourselves as being individual and not part of a collective. So that's it's difficult to change that mindset because you have to think collectively if you're going to organize to get anything done. But absolutely, we need political education so that people in this country don't sit around saying, I don't know what to do. Well, I'll tell you what you shouldn't do is look to the Democratic Party to save you. You could start there. That's like the first thing you need to do.
Going back to your piece, you write, real journalists would reveal the extent of oligarchic control of the U.S. political system. That control made the losing effort to keep a failing man afloat seem like the best choice. The corporate media work with the Democrats to ensure that the public's choices remain limited to the favorites of the party establishment. What do you say to those when you say that the corporate media work with Democrats? Because you've got the other side of the equation that will say, it's too far to the right, that all they do is champion and parrot the talking points of the right. What do you say to your point about they're working with the left? Or is it they're working with the left now as opposed to before?
Well, I think people need to, we can't allow ourselves to be trapped by I'm on the left, but what's first of all, the other thing, what's called the left in this country? It's very, no, it's not left anywhere else. But I think we need to think about the people's needs. I mean, if you think about all of the things, the expectations that I grew up with in my life, an expectation that a college education wouldn't bankrupt you, an expectation that you'd get a full-time job after you went to college, that you could buy some kind of a house, and those may seem like bourgeois expectations, but that's generally what people want, that healthcare isn't going to cost a fortune. If the terms left and right are troubling, ask yourself, who's being helped? Are the people being helped? Are real estate developers being helped? Are the banks being helped? Who's being helped? Big pharma? Well, that's not good for you. Real estate developers, gentrification? No, not good for you. So I think we have to start with something more basic understanding, because people's understanding has been perverted and twisted about how the system ought to work. If that helps.
It helps greatly because you just talked about who's being helped, and in fact, AM, thank you. You say, Dr. Leon, you say in your XM show, the answers are in the analysis, and that's true, folks. If you listen to what we're saying, the answers are in what we're telling you. But I remember Obama's first term. He signed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. He signed the DREAM Act. He came out and supported same-sex marriage. He did a number of things to demonstrate to his base that he appreciated their support. Now, he didn't do a hell of a lot for us, but he did. The Hispanic community, the women voters that supported him, the gay and lesbian community, they got legislation signed, or they got a president to come out and say, I back this agenda. We didn't get that as African Americans because he didn't want to be a black president. But my point is, when folks sat back and looked at the Obama administration, many of them could point to a piece of legislation that addressed the issues of their community. So when you say, sit back and look at what you're getting, ask the Democrats that question. What are you offering me that's going to make my life better? Don't keep telling me Donald Trump came out of Pandora's box, which, by the way, released all the evils on the world. That's what was in the box. You're supposed to get substantive legislation from the process. What are you getting?
Well, that's why Kamala Harris couldn't win. That's why, I've said many times that if people still had, during the pandemic, and there were the stimulus packages, and there was expansion of eligibility for Medicaid and for SNAP, and there was a child tax credit. I've said if people still had their child tax credit, they wouldn't have cared that Biden was senile. They would have said, I'm voting for him anyway. I mean, I'm sort of joking, but not really. It was a combination of, and they knew what people wanted. Why did they say he's going to be the most progressive president since FDR? He's going to cut child poverty in half. They know that's what people wanted. And we didn't get the Build Back Better legislation. If they had done even some of that, even a little of that, then I think a Democrat would be in the White House. It could be Joe Biden with his new cancer diagnosis, but I think there could still be a Democrat in the White House. But all those things that they knew people wanted was not what the oligarchs wanted people to have, and so we didn't get them. And so Donald Trump is president.
Two things, Auntie Ann, thank you for that $5 super sticker there. They have to impose austerity, no M4A or college to keep people joining the military and police department. Thank you very much. And Vincent Robinson for that $20 super sticker. Most blacks didn't demand anything from President Obama either. Vincent, you are absolutely right, which is why we didn't get anything.
Absolutely. It was, in general, we're told, black politics now consists of little more than keeping Republicans out. But it was also having a black president. So, and then you were told you can't make any demands because the Republicans, are going to stop him, and he can't just be the black. He wasn't the black president at all. Many of his comments about black people were negative. Black men are irresponsible, and he did it again. He did not help. I thought it was funny. I was like, well, Mr. Not Helpful. The brothers, you're not supporting Kamala Harris. You just don't like a woman. No, really, dude. That was like Mr. Unhelpful. But yes, you don't get anything without a demand. And to be told, and that to me is one of the problems with Trump being president. When he leaves office, it's going to be, you don't want Trump or somebody like Trump to come back. So it's going to be, we'll be right back where we were before. You can't demand, you can't ask for anything, because if you do, you risk a Republican winning again. And that would be a shame.
Today is the 19th of May, which would have been the 100th. We're celebrating, commemorating, honoring the 100th birthday of Malcolm X. Your thoughts, and you can take that anywhere you want to take it. Your thoughts.
Well, 60 years, he was assassinated 60 years ago, and Dr. King just a few years later. That was the high watermark of Black politics. Malcolm X spoke about self-determination, liberation of Black people around the world. He connected, he said, you can't understand Mississippi if you don't understand the Congo. And that's another thing that's very important. People think they're going to get justice here when the U.S. is carrying out a genocide in Gaza. That's not going to happen. He spoke about self-determination for us in this country. He centered Black people and our condition in everything that he said and did. He said so many things that we are still true now. If you're not careful, the press will have you. I'm about to mess up the quote. Hating who oppresses you and
loving your oppressor and hating your friends.
Yes, and hating the oppressed. And that's true. That's absolutely true. And he said, he had a great sense of humor. He said, they talk about the North and the South, and the North is supposed to be so much better. And he said, if you're south of Canada, you're in the South. So, the Black liberation movement was a seminal moment in this country. And that's why it was crushed. And that's why we have to study what he said. We have to study his words, study what he and others did, because these same people, there was a counter-revolution. Because everything that happened in the 60s, the Civil Rights Act, the Medicare, Medicaid, anti-war movement, the environmental movement, which, by the way, Nixon created the EPA because the environmentalists targeted people for defeat and defeated them. And that's why we got an EPA. And that is why COINTELPRO was the most extreme, but they made a decision to put an end to any talk of mobilization and agitation. And that's another reason it's so hard for people to see themselves taking part in that, because it was crushed, it was diminished, it was even criticized. The 60s, it was too crazy, it was too radical, when all of these things that helped the entire country came into being. And that's because of people like Malcolm X, who spoke of Black pride, who spoke of knowing our connection to Africa, who taught you to hate yourself. And that turned into, I'm mixing things up. I'm not saying it was a direct connection with the Black Power movement, but this Black politics, which is not just Black politicians,
right?
But Black politics was asserted firmly, proudly, without equivocation. We thought about what will be good for our people, what will be bad for our people, and it's because of the leadership of people like El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm X.
And to your point about the internationalization of the struggle, if you don't know, you can't understand Mississippi if you don't know Congo. Well, we could equate that now to Palestine. And how many of us in our community don't understand that connection?
Well, we're told you can't talk about it because you just got to get Biden or Harris back into office. So you can't talk about it, except if she had broken with Biden, she might have actually won that election. People do not.
Michigan, I know that.
Yeah, people do not want to look on their phone and see children being starved to death, which is Israeli policy, U.S. policy. They couldn't have done it, and it all started with Biden. Whatever's being done now, whatever Trump is doing, Biden is the one who began this onslaught, who began these atrocities. First of all, on a human level, you have to say that you're opposed to a policy that says the UN is begging Israel to let them bring in aid. And you can't forget your humanity, but on a practical, people say you have to be practical. Well, I'll tell you what's practical is knowing that a system that does that in Gaza is not going to do anything better for you.
And final point, a rumination with Andrew, who makes the point, Haiti is even nearer. And Andrew, you are absolutely right. And I say this all the time because people seem to forget Kamala Harris went to CARICOM to get CARICOM to be the minstrel face on American imperialism. Hakeem Jeffries went with her to the meeting. These are Black elected officials that are promoting colonial, imperialist, neoliberal policies and decimating Black people. Margaret, your comment, and I know your schedule is tight.
Yes, I do. I just want to show folks my book, Prejudential, Black America and the Presidents. It's a great book. You should read it.
As it is. I agree. Margaret Kimberley. And folks, go to Black Agenda Report. Go to Black Agenda Report. Thank you, Margaret. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Folks, we've gotten some a number of new subscribers. Thank you all very much. In fact, let me see if I can quickly go back to there we go. Hannibus Davis, R. Amin, David Johnson, and Zach. Thank you all so much. Kevin Baptist, thank you. Larry, really appreciated your engagement today. And, again, I say all the time, and Larry, you listen to me on XM, so you know when I'm asked, well, what are we to do? Well, again, a lot of times the answer is in the analysis, but I'll repeat and then we're out. You got to seriously consider third party because you've got to think longer game. When I heard people say, "Oh, well, if we do that, we'll wind up with Donald Trump." Yeah, but your life with Kamala would possibly be different, but it wouldn't necessarily have been better. Something to think about. More voter education, but along with organization, y'all have to learn how to organize. And if you're asking what to do and you're not calling your congressman, you're not writing or calling your senator, if you're not making demands of the people that you actually sent to represent you, Hakeem Jeffries is supposed to represent you along with the others. Then in the CBC, you're not doing your job. As a voter, as a citizen, you're not doing your job. So with all of that, tomorrow, well, first of all, thank you all. Margaret Kimberley, thank you so much. As always, folks, go to Black Agenda Report. A whole lot of invaluable information there. Thank you all so much for listening to the podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. New show tomorrow. Former UN rapporteur Alfred de Zayas will return. Phenomenal analysis that you'll get from attorney Alfred de Zayas. Follow and subscribe. Thank you all so much that have been subscribing. Leave a review, share the show, follow us on social media. This is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge, because talk without analysis is just chatter, and we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all tomorrow. Alfred de Zayas will be our guest. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a wonderful remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.